So let's start, Miss Anne. I want to start with you telling us about you, because when I first met you, it was one of the first things you said to me. You told me that you struggled a lot at school, you were dyslexic, your brain worked differently, you had a different visual way of processing and creating. And that, I think you must have been like early 40s when I met you, maybe, or it had taken you that long to just fully own that that's who you are. Is that like a good summary?
Yeah, I think so. And also both of us, being, children of empire in diaspora as well, there's also the additive situation there where culturally, both Nigerian and Ghanaian cultures, we're not the fastest to recognize these traits. And sometimes, I'm speaking of parents from my parents' generation, it's not always easy for them to even appreciate what's going on because they didn't have that understanding. And I think
I don't want to interrupt, but I just want to speak on that quickly because that is a really, really big topic that you've just raised. And what I just want to say now, maybe we'll come back to it. I spoke to this incredible woman called Lovette Jallow. Please look her up on Instagram. Her Instagram will blow your mind. She's this extraordinary Gambian Swedish woman who is a professor and an academic who researches neurodivergence in pre-colonial Africa. And what I learned from speaking to her, I would say a couple of things. It's the way that African cultures were assimilated into colonial white supremacist orders that have made it difficult for our families to accept or acknowledge neurodivergence. It's not anything inherent in our cultures. And her work is actually about understanding how before there was this language of autism or ADHD or dyslexia, it's an umbrella with so many different kinds of neurodivergence, how there are actually names for many of these things in many African or indigenous languages. And they were not names of a disorder or a problem. They were ways of describing the particular gift that somebody has through their cognition or their connection to another realm or the type of creativity they had. And that would feed into their role in the community, right? So I think it's really good to acknowledge at the outset of this conversation, when we're talking about neurodivergence, we have not through choice been given a language that is very Western, that is connected to the medical establishment, that has a baggage that is put on these ideas that they're problems that might need to be medicated or fixed. And that's not that's one choice. It doesn't have to be that way. And that's why I'm so excited about so many people from Black and brown indigenous backgrounds talking about their own neurodivergence, because I feel like if there's a critical mass of us connecting the way our brains work to our own traditions, we might get back to a place that pulls it out of the quite problematic Western lens. And then the second thing, just quickly, is that a lot of Black families who are very skeptical about neurodivergence, it's a very rational response in a way, because when you think about our experience of the medical profession, where, for example, Black women are so much more likely to die in childbirth, if you think about our experiences of mental health, where Black men are so disproportionately killed in custody, where treatable mental health conditions are met with violent restraint and criminalization rather than help and support, it's quite logical that we would be worried about anything that might lead us more into contact with those systems. So I think in Black families' reticence to embrace the idea that their children might be neurodivergent, there's that fear based in real experience of trauma and risk. So I think we should acknowledge that as well, while also acknowledging that if you are from an African family and you want to embrace your neurodivergence, that can be quite a tricky journey, because that's the framework that we have.
Yes, and education's so important, and especially sort of the post-independent generation that have are trying to do well in England, because of course white is right in how one sees a future for one's children and grandchildren. It gets even more tricky. I mean, it's really interesting hearing you speak, because there are some things that are quite easily diagnosed with me, and then there's a whole bunch of other things that the medical system just wouldn't, and I think back to First Nation indigenous communities and how they had specific roles for people. And I love the way you use the word gifts. And a small example with that, and my wife is continuously like, how on earth do you keep doing this? I have pretty extreme hyper awareness. So I'm the guy that, if you're walking too close to me, I just get out of the way because I can just feel it. But I have hyper awareness with children when they're in distress. And on so many occasions now I have been in places. The most recent one was in Guildford, where we're going up an escalator, my wife and I just saw this girl, and I was like, I looked at my wife. She goes, "You sure?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I knew she was in distress. I knew she was alone and scared. I felt it. So we waited till she got to the top of the lift. And, we got to her height level, and she's like, "I don't know where my father is." And so I said, "Look, my wife stayed with her, and then I went to look for this man. We did find the man, but this happens to me all the time in busy places. I am always the only one that sees it, senses it, and then approaches the child. And it sounds all jiggery pokery, but it just keeps happening. And it is. I think there is a sensory mechanism within. I think I have a lot of fight or flight, and I recognize something that is baked into my own way of decoding the world in other people that comes out to me that isn't really easily explainable from a kind of a medical point of view.
This is where we really quickly get into the kind of like supernatural element, because I was talking to, I've got 3 women really close to me who've all recently discovered that they're autistic. And I said, one of them told me that she just found out that everyone can't hear electricity, which blew my mind. I cannot hear electricity. I didn't know it was a thing to hear electricity. She didn't know it was a thing to not hear electricity, because all her life she can hear the constant hum of electricity. And it's not tinnitus. It's not like my boiler's a bit noisy today. It's like, it's just a sensory processing. She can hear it, something she's connected to that I'm not. And I put on a group chat with these other 2 women that I'm close to who both discovered they're autistic. Oh my God, this person just told me that she can hear electricity. And they both said, "Can you not?" And I was just like, to me, that is like a superpower, because your auditory capacity is like picking up things that are completely out of range for me. And I was reading about how autistic people often do have an intensely finely tuned hearing.
Yep.
Hearing back, they're very, even from, and actually it's a way that autism sometimes gets diagnosed. Babies or small children who have extraordinary hearing, way out of the normal range. So when you're talking about being able to sense someone's distress and to sense it viscerally, to me, that's just one of so many reasons why I think framing these as problems or abnormalities is just not helpful, because it's a really
and
extraordinary insight into
abnormalities.
how your brain
That word
works.
is, I hate that abnormal. I mean, I remember my school. What do you call it, report, and I had to read it in those days to my dad, and they said that we believe your son, this is in the 80s, right, has mild retardation. That was the language they used. But I'm going to read very quickly just a list of some of those things, and whatever you want to pick up on, you can. So hundreds of conversations in my head at all times. So whilst we've been discussing this, I've had to push back a whole bunch.
What have you been thinking about in the last 3 minutes that I've been talking?
My vintage gaming collection, the Tamiya radio control car called the Boomerang that I had, and the fact that Lewis Hamilton's dad posted a picture of the same radio-controlled car. I'm thinking of a scene that I'm writing for a film at the moment. I'm thinking whether my dog has gone out to wee whilst I'm on this for an hour. It just goes on and on. But I have a way to reduce it and push it back. So that's one.
It's kind of a shame, because I'm actually I'm really fascinated for that insight into the things that you're not speaking about. Like, I didn't know you had a vintage gaming collection. How do you curate what you share compared to what you're thinking about?
It's taken a long time, which is why I really struggled at school, because I couldn't control it, and they started fighting with each other. But I think when I got to about 35, I started letting it breathe. It's a weird thing to say in my mind, but I kind of I started drawing lanes in my brain for them. And then and then I would visit them rather than they would visit me, if you see what I mean.
That makes it sound like you can organize it into quite a linear structure. Are you able to separate the things out into
But I can play. I remember when we used to play online poker back in the day, I could play 10 games at the same time. And I mean, really play. And even that, the limitation was the real estate on the screen, not my mind. And I found that quite slow. So the
note to self: never to play a card game.
But in real life, card games are way too slow for me. So if you took me into a physical poker game, which I do sometimes, it's like watching paint dry. I'm like, what the fuck? I need.
Yeah. I think that's a very ADHD phenomenon, to be very impatient, get bored very quickly, and your brain is working really fast. I just wanted to say, Alison Hazelhurst commented on our chat. She's saying how horrible, talking about your experience, what you're sharing, Misan, and racist, and I'm sorry. And she says, I was labeled too talkative, doesn't apply herself. And I just want to pick up on that, because when I was doing the research on why ADHD is so often looked over in girls, I think there has been this very male-centric model about an ADHD boy who's disruptive, who can't sit still. It manifests differently in girls. Girls often contribute a lot. They'll be the kid, and this was completely me, the kid in the class who always wants to ask a question, always puts their hand up first, wants more. And it's not disruptive. It's like, I want more of the class. I want more of the conversation. I want to go deeper. I'm constantly contributing. And that, even though it's not been understood until quite recently as an ADHD phenomenon, it also carries these penalties, kind of like what Alison's saying, that you're told you're too talkative, you're you're too domineering, you take up too much space in the class. And girls in particular are often told, be quiet, just shrink yourself a little bit, pare yourself back. It's not okay. And it was actually interesting. I was reading Cynthia Erivo's book. She's talked about her neurodivergence. I've forgotten what it's called, but she can see sound. She can see colors attached to music. And she's been talking about that. But she also, and I don't know if I'm not trying to diagnose her or anything, but I don't know if she's ADHD, but in her book, she was talking about how in class, she also was always asking questions, always putting her hand up, and always getting told off, just for kind of being too much. And I think that's it was so interesting for me, because I only recently started to realize how many of these ADHD traits apply.
So you didn't realize this when you were a young girl?
I realized it about 2 months ago when I started writing a piece on neurodivergence. I'm not even a month and a half. So in December, I noticed many women in my life started to be diagnosed with, and neurodivergence is such an umbrella, broad condition. I'm talking mainly about autism and ADHD, but not because they're the only conditions. They're just the ones that have been showing up in my life. And it's often now, Black women keep talking about ADHD because they often have both. So I decided I was like, this is a really fascinating phenomenon. Being, in journalistic mode, I was like, I'm going to write a feature about it. And I'm really interested in why it's been overlooked in women and girls. And there's this huge surge in the number of women and girls now getting diagnosed, finding recognition. And there are two things that really stood out. One, so many of the women I spoke to who've just discovered they're autistic, for example, are psychologists. Their entire professional life has been spent diagnosing and understanding autism. And yet it took years for them to see it in themselves. That's how unused we are to seeing how it shows up in professional women. And the second thing is that I genuinely just didn't think it applied to me, because I don't have any problems, if that makes sense. And so I, of course, having been conditioned by the way we talk about this in society, I thought ADHD is a person that needs Ritalin to get through a day. I'm fine. So it's not relevant to me. And of course, as soon as I started seeing the list of ways it shows up, I saw myself. And of course everyone has problems, but I didn't realize that things that I do that frustrate me about myself were ADHD. Like, for example, incapable of screwing a lid properly onto something. The number of times I have lost a laptop because water has spilt in my bag because I didn't put the lid on properly, or every time I open my fridge, something spills out because there's a lid not on properly and it spurts out when you open the door. Or the way that in the morning light torments me, like I need like an hour to be introduced to light in the morning. I'm really, really sensitive to light. It's like a physical assault. I'm really sensitive to like bad lighting, bright, kind of jarring lighting is really, really painful for me to experience. So all these little things I made a list of like 3 L's. It's lights, losing things, and lists, because I get so distracted that I have to make so many lists to stay on my tasks, because my mind is also spiraling in like multiple directions all the time. And I'm a really impatient person, and I thought that was something I just needed to work on in myself. And I do probably, but it was just quite life-changing to realize.
Contextualize the impatience, like in what aspect?
I find waiting unbearable. I find waiting for things that are slow unbearable. I've never been able to stand in a queue or a line. I'm a rule breaker. And it's not because I don't value order. I just don't have time to follow it myself. And it's not like laziness or disrespect. I think I just like the idea of just going to the back of the line and standing, like I'll just abort the mission entirely or do something else.
Do you get frustrated? Because I'm very similar with you with this one. When I ask for bills, when they flipping bring me the paper and not the card machine, I lose my, like, I can't, I'm like, why? I want to leave this place. And I asked, now I said, please, can I have the bill and the card machine? I always ask that because they go on seems like a bloody pilgrimage onto it's just little things like that, the regular people. And I look at friends of mine that don't have that, who are just jolly and chilling and chatting. I'm like, I want to leave. In fact, my mind has left this place.
Yeah. You know what was now it makes sense why living in Ghana is really hard for me. Because at the time I was like, what's wrong with me? I'm not Ghanaian enough. I'm a failure as an African. Now I realize, like, Ghana is what you just described on steroids. Somebody's going to tell you to come to this office at 9 a.m. to sort out a thing, and you will sit there until 5 p.m. in a chair waiting. And that's just normal. And you can't complain or make a fuss, because if you do, they're just going to double down and tell you to come back tomorrow. Like, you just wait. It's a whole culture designed around, someone says, I'll come and see you tomorrow morning. They mean at some point tomorrow. It might be 7 or 8 hours later, and you just expected to wait for the person, or, it's, and it's really, really frustrating when you have a lot to do.
Yep.
But I do see there's a kind of spiritual integrity to it, because there's an understanding that it's not natural to fill every minute of your life, to have like a back-to-back schedule where you're constantly rushing from A to B. Sometimes it's good to just sit and be present and acknowledge that things have their time. And sometimes in that waiting, you have a conversation or a connection with someone that you wouldn't have had. You're forced to be in the moment, to kind of surrender to forces outside your control. I think a lot of Western culture is about being in denial that there are forces outside our control. That's why we really struggle with things that are like nature reminders. Why we struggle with mortality. All these oligarchs are trying to like prolong their lives or go into cryogenic freezing, because you have to accept there are cycles and things you don't control to be able to have a spiritually fulfilled life. And I think there are lots of ways that we have deluded ourselves that we can control everything.
Yeah.
So I think I suffer from that even more, because I'm really impatient and I have very strong ideas about what I'm trying to do. And I'm always generating new ideas about what I want to do. And that can lead to a life where you actually are never still and never present, right?
Yeah, and it's frustrating because it does feel like sometimes it is an affront to you, and sometimes this is, as a Nigerian person, sometimes people do take the flipping piss.
I'm not condoning
but Ghanaians, there's a meekness to like the service culture that was, again, driving me absolutely just like, and you have to rewire, and you get it in all different parts of the world. But
we'll come back to that for another day. But the Ghanaian meekness is a complete performance. Do not be fooled. Ghanaians have mastered the art of seeming like they would not hurt a fly. They're so harmless and sweet. Trust me, as soon as that door is closed, what's going on behind it is a completely different story. But anyway, it's a very persuasive performance.
Okay, because we don't.
I agree.
Nigeria, we don't.
No, there's no that you don't perform that in Nigeria.
No. I mean, this is going to make you laugh because obviously I'm so well known for this, but I think I have shared this. I have serious issues, and says a protest photographer, with large groups of people. It's very difficult for me. In fact, when if my wife wants to go and see a big concert in a big, sort of Wembley level place, I will prepare for a week. Everything I need to deal with that. With the protests, if anyone actually watches me in a protest, you'll see how I move. I'm, always by myself with my backpack. I'm never in one place for long. I kind of always find spaces where I feel like I'm in some kind of control. When there's a big mosh pit, sometimes I'll get in there, but not for long. And I keep it moving. But also, the camera is such a shield for me, because
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, when I'm shooting, I am in this sort of daze that really, really helps me. If you were asking me to go without a camera to a big protest, I would just have a panic attack. It's as simple as that. I couldn't do it.
That's so interesting. So it gives you a device, it gives you a kind of clear place, and it gives you the ability to move differently, and like go through your lens, your gaze, rather than just kind of being fully immersed in all of the experience. I want to ask you about eating. How's your food life? How's your food? Just talk to me about it. Do you eat well? Do you like food? Do you ever struggle? Do you ever feel like you're not in control of how you're eating, or do you worry about your
I think I'm much
health?
better now. I think in my 20s and 30s, because I didn't really when you think you're just superhuman in terms of I didn't even know trauma exists and can manifest itself physically until I was 40, I would say. So there are lots of habits that I can see now that were definitely trauma informed, and in terms of, I really needed to eat this sort of candy or drink this sort
of comfort eating.
Comfort eating, but also kind of anxiety led eating that didn't. I've never been a huge drinker, thank God. Like it's not my thing. But definitely I've used food to try and self-medicate in ways that I now look back on thinking that's what you were doing. Because I haven't shared this, I don't think, publicly before, but about just after COVID, I was really sick with COVID. Not as sick as, I didn't go into hospital, but I was pretty near. And I lost loads of weight. I was in bed for ages, and just, immune system not great. Anyway, as I got better, one day, it's funny about the mind, it was always when you're alone, right? One day my wife and my kids were young, they went out locally, so they were out with the pram, not the car, and I was in the house, and I suddenly felt this pain on my left thigh, and I was just like, that's odd. So I continue making a coffee, and I'm holding my coffee, and I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm going to pass out. And in my head, I was like, Jesus, Misan, I think you're having a stroke. That's what I thought. So I leave this voice note to my wife saying, I think I'm in trouble. I basically go out to the neighbor's house in a haze, and it was during lockdown, so no one was really available. And my wife was running back with the babies. Anyway, cut a long story short, they take me to hospital during lockdown. and they scan the living hell out of me. They scan everything. There's nothing. And then I'll never forget this Sikh man, I remember his turban. He walks up to me and I'm terrified and scared and confused. And he goes, "Are you a survivor of any kind of child abuse?"
Wow.
He looked me in the eyes and I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm not here for any sort of therapy session." And he looked to me again and he put his hands on my shoulder and he said, "Did you go through things no child should have?" And I looked at him and I said, "Yes." Do you know, as I said that word, yes, all the stuff that was making my side stiff, it just disappeared. I was released from A&E that same evening.
Wow.
And that's when I learned what unmanaged, unresolved trauma can do to a spicy mind, because we process things very, very differently. And that was when I really started going on a journey of like, I need to get to know you inside, my friend. And I also need to recognize some of the stuff that I went through is directly linked to this, because that episode was, I would say, 40 years of bottled up whatever it is, that finally my immune system, because of COVID, was too weak. There was no one near me that could, and it just poured itself out. And then I started researching, and there are panic attacks that are exactly the same symptoms as having a stroke. They're the worst. They're awful things, but they do happen. And then that's really set me on a journey of understanding my tics, little things that happen to me that my mind is telling me you need to simmer. So I use music. There's specific songs that I use to calm me down and just keep me on a level. There are sort of exercises, like if you see me doing this, like counting my fingers, it's a relaxation thing. There's obviously many people do their tapping of their legs. I have different sort of spectrums of that for both comfort and discomfort and tiredness that really, really help me. And I think everyone's different. And I shared that because I think it's really, really important for folks from, I think, all cultures. There's that book, right? The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
People need to really listen to their bodies. And of course, when you're listening to your body, you're actually listening to your mind.
But also the reverse is true. If you don't process your pain, your trauma, your truth, it will manifest. It's not an option. I think it's so interesting at our age. You can go through your teens, your 20s, your 30s. It looks like it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I was like, I don't have any problems.
Mm-hmm.
I need to realize that there are levels to the denial and repression, and you just get so good at masking.
Masking.
Last time we were talking about, how in the past people use this language of high functioning, which is really problematic for
which I have, and I'm really learning from you not to.
Well, it was, very widespread. But when you really think about it, I think, it's also acknowledging that neurodivergence is obviously a huge spectrum and it can affect people and show up very differently. So there's a kind of ableism in the language of high functioning that's kind of saying, you're good. You're not one of those disabled autistic people. You're one of the good ones who's professional and able-bodied. And, it's like kind of creating a hierarchy of ability and value really in society and saying you're at the top end. It's the kind of good kind of neurodivergence.
Yeah, of course,
so we can all see like that's super ableist and really problematic. But also it doesn't create space for the reality that somebody who is like supposedly high functioning, i.e. they look like everything's fine and they're assimilating into what we expect of successful people, are doing it at a huge cost, which is that they're masking their actual experience. They are trying to perform normality. They're trying to perform what's been normalized as neurotypicality.
Mm-hmm.
So, they in autistic women, this is what I found so fascinating. Like autistic women will study other people's facial responses and model their own facial responses so that they know how to behave in a social setting, so they fit in. They're not having their true reaction. They're not behaving in a way that feels authentic to them. They're copying what other people do so that they don't seem weird. And that one raises a question, why can't people be themselves? Why is everyone... And, who knows, maybe the person they're copying similarly doesn't know what to do and is copying them because they're also hiding their own neurodivergence. And then people getting home at the end of the day and just being in complete burnout because the cost, the cognitive and psychic cost of constantly masking and feeling like you have to perform this neurotypicality so you fit in and you don't get judged or you don't get discriminated against is absolutely exhausting. And everyone can relate to that. When you can't be yourself, if you go to a social thing for whatever reason, you can't be yourself, it's exhausting. Afterwards, you pay the price. Some people get migraines. Some people have to just lie in a quiet room. Some people shout at their kids. It manifests one way or another. So,
well, it's interesting you say that because, of course, narcissists, I've always been envious of, of that side of horrible people because they genuinely, these people, they sleep Trump is not masking, right? They sleep well at night. All the things that we worry about, all those sort of things, it's for a certain type of person. And a lot of them, I wouldn't say are neurotypical, but I think that there is a specific type of personality type that people do look up to that genuinely...
It's narcissism.
They do not
say that. I don't want to get into Trump's neuro type because, who knows? But I do question that because the way he uses social media suggests to me that he is obsessed with what people think about him.
Oh, he's thin-skinned.
I don't know, though, if that's peaceful. I don't know if you can sleep peacefully at night if you're obsessed with what people think of you, what they're saying, wanting to project a certain image, taking every slight it's such petty vengeance. That doesn't sound like...
No, but that's individualism. I'm talking more of I genuinely can't sleep because of what's happening to children in Congo and Sudan and Ghana.
No, that's not what's keeping him awake at night.
I mean, not even that. Just poverty in America is not...
Yes, that's also not keeping him awake at night. Pretty sure about that. Yeah, it's just the complete lack of empathy. Yeah, I think it is interesting.
If it's linked to him, though, and his sense of self, he will have some problems there. But the altruistic side of it just isn't... It's not there. It's not there at all. And Afua, imagine you could live your life not giving two hoots about anyone, and all you cared about was whatever gratifications you looked for. So whether that was material, spiritual, whatever. I know people that literally their whole lives is just about what can I get for myself, and I'm just in awe of it.
No, because the problem is you're going to die. And when you do, you're not taking any of that stuff with you. And you will have a moment where you have to look back and ask what the point of it was. And I think we've all seen that. You don't have to wait till you die. We've seen that play out in people's lives where they kind of get all the things that they want and then want more. And there comes a point where it's like, what is the point of this?
Well, at what cost? At what cost? Because again, and we'll go. We're digressing as we always would, but I do. I look at Liz Truss or Kemi or
I love how you made this about politics in the end. Anyway,
but I'm like, Kemi has brushed her teeth and put on whatever she wears to go to sleep, and she's tucked herself in, and does she think, oh, wow, I can't believe I'm in this place at this point in my life. Let me go to sleep.
I don't know why you're trying to take us into bed with Kemi. I don't know why you're doing that to me.
It's just... I
don't want to be in that bed, Misan.
No, I know. And we are digressing, but I think the central point is with neuro folks, empathy, and I can't prove this, and there must have been clinical trials, but almost all the most empathetic people I know are definitely not, they are neurodivergent people.
Raise the question, why have we framed neurotypes in such a way that the empathetic people are the ones that are outliers. You know what I mean? Like, it does raise questions about what's divergent and what's typical. I'm laughing because I was watching Naruto with my daughter yesterday. I've been like beaten into submission to watching Naruto. Have you ever watched Naruto, Misan? Are you an anime person? So we're on episode like 5068 or something. But she was laughing because I was crying. I was crying because Kakashi has just been killed, and I was literally, I love Kakashi, and she was like, "It's a cartoon," and I was like, Kakashi is real to me. Super sensitive. I just want to take you back though to food, because the reason I asked about food, and thank you for sharing that story, by the way, because that I didn't know that, and that sounds really scary. But I'm also really glad that it made you start to take your trauma and like the kind of pent up experiences seriously. I spoke to this another person I recommend you look up called Dr. Helen Lawal. She's awesome. I've actually known her for a long, long time before she knew she was autistic and ADHD. She's a GP and a nutritionist, and now she works with ADHD women. And she was saying, which really struck a chord with me, she really struggled with her diet, with her health, and she felt so much shame because she's a GP. Like, she gives this advice to other people for a living. Like, she knows how to eat healthily, what you're supposed to do, and she couldn't understand why it was such a struggle for her to stick to it, just to like do a weekly shop and buy all the right things and batch cook and follow this meal plan. And she realized that all the diet and nutrition advice is for neurotypical people, doesn't take into account that neurodivergent people eat differently, connect to food and their nutritional needs differently. And she was saying, you're so often, when you follow that conventional advice, working against your brain and then feeling bad about yourself when it doesn't work, instead of working with your brain, which is a completely transformative experience. And I separately also read a study about anorexia, and it's really new area of research, but basically it's emerging that the vast majority of people with disordered eating are autistic or in other ways neurodivergent. And so the ways that they've been treated is really inappropriate often, because it's like, for example, if you force an anorexic person to eat, you've got to work with the ways that they often have a kind of like obsessive connection with the way they do things, or a need for routine that's very, very important to them, or a need to be prepared and able to anticipate in advance what's going to happen. The point is that is such an overlooked element of the reason that some people struggle with things. And, that's for me how I access this. It's like things I've always struggled with. I would have told you I don't have any struggles because I thought these were kind of trivial things that I just need to try harder at. Now I realize that this is all part of my neurotypes, how my brain works, and that doesn't mean, by the way, that I can't work at things. It doesn't mean I can't, I guess for me, right? The question is not, is this normal? Or is this neurotypical, or is it divergent? Is this what you're supposed to do or what you're not supposed to do? The question I always ask is, does this serve me? Does this serve me? The fact that I'm creative and have loads of ideas, that serves me. I'm really grateful my mind works like that. The fact that I sometimes struggle to see something through to completion, that doesn't serve me. So therefore, how can I create strategies to work with my brain to make sure that I am able to complete things? The fact that I find light in the morning really painful, that doesn't, so it's like I've got to find ways of being gentle with myself. But the fact that at night, when everything's quiet and all the distractions have gone away, I'm super productive and I get into my zone in a way that serves me. So it's not like trying to change yourself because you want to be neurotypical. It's just more working out how can you manage the way your mind works so that it works, it's working with you and the things that you're trying to accomplish in life. So, for example, I look at you post so much on social media, and it's amazing because everything you post has a purpose. It's like raising awareness about things that we need to be aware about. It's throwing a light on things that are being erased. And I sometimes look at that and I'm like, I really should post more. I find posting on socials, I go through phases. Sometimes it's really natural. Sometimes it's like a huge effort that I feel is kind of like violently assaulting my mind when it's trying to do something else. And kind of learning more about how my mind works is like, that's fine. That is how I function. Like, we're all different. I think we share the same mission when it comes to injustice and suffering and oppression in the world. How can you work with your mind to make sure you're doing justice to the things you believe in? It might not look the same as what someone else does, but the more you know about yourself, the more you can make informed choices about how you go about it.
Yeah. And I mean, this is going to people are going to say, "My God, this guy is he okay?" When I say this, but I'll share it. So on the posting, what people don't realize is, that's me doing the bare minimum for my mind, right? So I run about 25 pages at any given time online. Lots of hobby pages people won't know I'm behind, around movies, photography, just random stuff, Tumblr, Pinterest pages, loads of Facebook pages that I update every day. Right? Just because my mind, I have to do that. Like,
so what I'm seeing on Instagram is the tip of the iceberg.
It's just a little
that's
tiny
blowing my mind.
And also that because I consume so much and so fast that, when people send you things, there's never been a moment, or very rarely, where someone sends me something that I haven't already seen from the full gamut of the internet. Right? It just isn't that. It's very, very, very impossible for that to happen. And when I send DMs to people, 9 times out of 10, if they don't know me, they're going to think there's something wrong with this guy, because I can send you, if I'm trying to behave and control myself so that you and I can remain friends, I can send you 50 DMs in a day. And for me, that's me trying to manage myself. Right. So people that get used to me, and what I love is when I find someone that has a similar thing, like Lisa Moorish. It's so funny because when we started getting to know each other, I was like, Lisa,
definitely your soul sister.
She's like DMing me, and I was just like, oh, I love it. I'm like, because most people were like, what the fuck? Like, can you chill? It's been 10 minutes. You sent me like 18 messages. We can't help ourselves. And for me, it's like, in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, Afua, have you seen this? Is amazing. It made me feel something. It's amazing. Please come. Do you want to hear this part of this song? Have you seen this part of this film? Do you remember when you first saw Lost Boys? Do you remember the music from Lost Boys? It's amazing. Shall I tell you the kind of camera systems they use in Lost Boys? Did you want to, and that's just me, normal. So you can imagine, I've learned to reel it in when I have to, because the world outside of my mind is not ready or sometimes accepting of it. So when I post, I am curating it as best I can for the world to accept. But to feed the rest of my brain, I have to have all sorts of other things that I do posting online as well. So yeah, there you go.
I didn't.
And the other thing,
my mind is slightly blown.
Speaking of masking and finding technology,
is that one of those heated?
So it's an ember mug, right? And
I really want one of those. I've had these. I just gave my cousin one of those, a version of that for Christmas. And when you give someone a gift, you're like,
it's amazing. But it's completely linked to, again, what we're talking about, because
you make loads of cups of tea and then let them go cold all the time.
You have 7 mugs of and sometimes, because I go on, so I call them side quests all the time. It's just ridiculous. I just cold hot drinks. I just
want people to know, by the way, this is not a paid product placement. We have received no money from
No. This is a dream.
So
because
we should at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they don't know I exist, but they have really changed my tea coffee life, because of course you put your drink in here and you can go off on a side quest for 3 hours and you come back. And that's
actually a really interesting point. I don't think, because people are still kind of waking up to this. Like, for example, that is a company that should be marketing itself to people as a way of managing ADHD, but they haven't cottoned on to the fact that actually there's a market, like things that help you manage. And, I make cups of tea. I actually do want to drink them. I don't want to let them go. I'm always getting told off leaving like half drunk cups of tea everywhere. It's not that I make it and I don't want to drink it. I just move on to something else.
Just move on.
So just move on to something else, so that I forget about it. And then when I come back, it's cold, and that's really sad. So I would actually love one of those. B.A. Davidson talked about hyperfocus, and I want to point that out. That's another reason it took me a long time to see my ADHD, because I thought ADHD is like scattered mind. I've read Gabor Mate's Scattered Mind. It's kind of, you're all over the place. But it's the flip side of ADHD is hyperfocus, where you go into this mode where it's like an obsessive focus on one thing. And that is actually, I would just, if I had to pick one word to describe my entire writing career, it's when I get into a writing project, don't talk to me. I won't answer my phone. I won't check my email. I won't go on socials. I have to force myself to keep doing the things I need to. Go to the gym, take my daughter to school, cook food, because I just want to keep doing this thing until it's done. And that's why I love writing. I love going deep into research and crafting things. That's a way that I can use that to create something that I think and I hope has value. But it's funny, isn't it? When you hear ADHD, you think of somebody who's all over the place, not somebody who's like doubling down, but it's a real ADHD trait, and it can kind of go from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, yeah, and I can imagine you in your zone when you're doing it, and it's
and I'm happy. I'm absolutely,
yeah, it's your natural habitat. It's exactly where you're supposed to be.
I remember it's the opposite to you probably. I don't think I've ever been happier than when I was doing my A-levels and my GCSEs. And I was so happy. And I was a really badly behaved, disruptive, like slightly out of control teenager. I was really, really naughty. I was always getting in trouble. I wasn't like a goody two-shoes at all. But I was so happy during my exams. I think the reason is there was only one thing I had to do. I knew I needed to focus on my exam, so I didn't go out and I wasn't doing other stuff. And I gave myself permission to do one thing. I allowed myself to go into hyperfocus. I felt zero guilt about it or shame. It was socially permitted for me to be in hyperfocus. And I felt so happy. And I remember at the time thinking, this is weird. It's meant to be stressful. This is meant to be a bad experience. I'm literally in my element because I don't have to worry about anything else. There's nothing to distract me. I'm just doing this one thing. And I was living my absolute best life. So I kind of miss that because now when I do need to focus, like right now I'm trying to finish my next book, but I still have to do all the other things. Like I'm still a parent, I still run a company, I still have a million projects. I can't.
Well, adulting, that's a point I want to, how do you adult? Because like I am not a fully functioning adult in any serious sense. And when I say every day, when I go down to the kitchen, every door's open. And like I will take the tea and the thing, and I just, like you said earlier, I've just moved on. Fridge open, right? And my wife comes down, bless her, and she's just like, darling, I was like, oh, sorry, and she'll close it for me, and it's those things. My brain, that part of my brain, just doesn't have any value for anything beyond.
Was it you who sent me a picture of like your box of tea bags?
I put it in the fridge.
Your fridge.
Yeah.
Not on purpose.
No. I just sort of in my head, I was like, I finished. I just put it there.
At least you put it away. You know what I think? In terms of romantic relationships, imagine how much easier it would be for people to work out their compatibility and how they're going to kind of support each other if they had more literacy about the way their brains work. Because just listening to you talk about your wife, I'm thinking you really found a partner who can support you, appreciate you, and basically not hate you for being yourself, right? That's not everyone would be able to not only put up with that, but still like appreciate you and love you and realize it's connected to all your strengths and gifts and the things that she loves about you as well. I just feel, and I'm really blessed as well. I have a partner he's somebody who believes in like growth. And so his lens is always like we're all always kind of learning about ourselves and working on ourselves instead of being critical, which for me is like really crucial. I think I thinking about this, how could I be with someone who's always critiquing me? Because I would just constantly, it would be never ending, and it would be really demoralizing. But it's a really important point. Like when you're thinking about both who you can be in a relationship with, but especially your life partner, and the kind of the gender roles, the breakdown of the labor that comes with having a relationship, having a home, if you have kids, having a family, is actually a really important consideration. Like somebody whose brain works like yours is not going to be the person who's going to be responsible for leaving everything really tidy every day. I'm guessing just from what
I am not tidy. I am not tidy.
And the person who's going to be with you needs to be someone who has a high tolerance threshold for, because some people just can't cope with that. They can't cope with surprises. They can't cope with a lack of order.
Yeah.
It would send them over the edge. So that would not be a good
Yeah.
time.
And it's one of those things with me where what you lose in some of those things, it's kind of I maybe lose and gain. Everyone's different, but I remember when we first started dating, and a typical date would be me asking her to watch a movie because I wanted her to experience feelings, right? From those films. And I find it really, really interesting how I say we, people that are, neurodivergent, can have access to an emotional pool that a lot of people have to work hard to get. And I remember my wife saying, "Listen, I was talking about Live to Tell, that song by Madonna. Live to Tell. Huh? And I'll be like, okay, great song. But in this bit, there's a bit where it gets quiet. And it gets really quiet. And then she goes, if I ran away, I'd never have the strength to go very far. And I said, that is the exact moment this song goes from good to great. And she's just looking at this guy. It's like, I like the song, but and that is the reason. And I don't know whether this, everyone's different, but with my photography, I am probably the fastest at my sort of level photographer on shoots, right? So my GQ Man of the Year of Lewis Hamilton, because of certain things that happened with the moving image, I had 7 minutes to shoot the cover.
Wow.
And we just did it, boom, boom, boom. And I remember when I finished, Lewis was like, I mean, we're finished.
Was it stressful? Were you stressed, or were you just were you in hyper focus? Was it just that's how long you need?
I know when I have the shot. I know it. So I think some photographers may spend 3 hours getting ready and then they'll shoot for another. Compositionally, I know, and it's a feeling.
See what I'm saying about superpower?
Well, I don't know if it's superpower. No, but it's like I genuinely, most of my shoots are over in half an hour. So all those shots that people have seen, I've shot them, if I have 2 hours, right, with somebody, we'll spend an hour and a half probably chatting. And then there is some photography. Because actually the chatting will allow me to compositionally find their truth easier.
That's where you're really doing the work, yeah.
So there's, but going back to partners, I would say this, and this is another personal thing I'm going to say. I have said it before, but it is personal. When we were dating and things were going well and it was getting serious, I remember this woman looking me in the eyes and saying, I love you, but there's a sadness in your eyes. And I was like, and she's like, yeah, you mask it beautifully and you're charming. People like you, but there is a sadness and it's far, far back. But I see it.
She saw you.
And I want you to know, that whatever has been taken from you was never your fault. And to have someone look at you in that way and all of your defense mechanisms are gone, it's just extraordinary, and it gives you the sense of self-worth that a lot of us people that struggle with imposter syndrome, self-doubt, unresolved trauma, blah, 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 and the way our minds work, the final pieces to the puzzle of actually taking a real bite out of life. So yeah, you are right. If you're lucky to find a partner that basically finds your scars, sees them, and it's similar to that Peter Gabriel song with Kate Bush, "Don't Give Up," right? When he comes home and he says he can't find any work and he's a complete failure, and just listen to what Kate says to him, or "By Your Side" by Sade as well.
Oh, I love that.
So anyway,
do you think your neurodivergence is connected to lived trauma, or do you think that you were born with it?
Both. So I think there's lots of fight or flight stuff that's just linked to childhood trauma, and then there is sort of the other stuff that is just probably genetic in terms of sort of attention stuff, spelling word stuff that is just, but the hypersensitivity. So children that have been in war zones have that, right? That have had extreme trauma. They're always kind of, and you should see me at an airport. I mean, airports are very hard for me.
Airports are actually a really important place in the neurodivergence discovery journey, because people I know discovered they were autistic by the way they cannot cope with an airport, like the complete overstimulation, the lights, the sounds, the alarms, the announcements, the chaos of it, the people rushing in different directions. That it is often where people realize, like, I am not comfortable with this ever. I love airports. Airports
Who loves an airport?
Absolute happy place. If I were more organized and less ADHD, I would get to the airport so much earlier than I do, so that I can just enjoy. Do you know what I love about airports? Everyone's going somewhere. Like, that is so fun to me. Everybody is on a journey. Everybody is going to be in a different place. And
I ain't with you with this one, sis.
It's like a portal. You're going to get on a plane here and then come out somewhere that's a completely different planet. And I just find that so magical.
And you're going to tell me now that you also love being in a tin can 30,000 feet in the air.
I love planes, sorry. I get my best work done on planes. Again, do you know what? I hadn't actually thought about this. Hyper-focus. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing else to do. All I have to do is do the work that is in front of me. And I actually this is a strong statement, but I'm not ever going to say I like being in economy, because nobody likes being in economy. But to be very honest, being in maybe premium economy is actually like the sweet spot for me at work.
Yeah,
because
premium's good.
Once you're in business and you're lounging and everything, it's like when you're in economy, you just have a little desk and your laptop, and there's no distractions. They're not coming to try and give you champagne or nice food. It's literally like no frills, just the work. And I can write a whole book chapter or a whole screenplay on a long flight. I literally love it.
Do you suffer from because every time I get near an airplane, I am convinced I'm dying. Right? Of course. I mean, so fight or flight, intrusive thoughts. Do you suffer from intrusive thoughts?
Not so much.
Okay, so that's another thing that I have extreme intrusive thoughts. So, and it's not even turbulence. Like, just the whole tin can in the sky thing.
Wow.
Is, it ain't.
You think yeah. I mean, if you stop and think about it, it's obviously not great.
It's not great.
I don't know why I have such faith in the planes I'm in. I think we should wrap up. I think this was such a fun conversation.
It was really lovely.
We're getting so much love. Thank you to everyone. You've been such an amazing audience. We've had loads of great comments, and I think this is something that people are really on a journey with. I feel this is a time people are becoming open to it, learning about it, seeing it in themselves, changing. It's changing. I think it's a thing that's actually changing in real time around us. And I think there's a way you can engage with this that doesn't have to be in any way taboo or pushing you into a medical situation. If you don't want it, it could just be a way of learning about yourself. But also, if you need medical support or you need solutions, like, you should find them. We all should be able to access what we need. And I think, like, breaking down the barriers that have allowed people, especially women and Black and brown people who've historically been excluded from accessing support or understanding about neurodivergence, that for me, it can only be a good thing. It's more information that empowers us.
Yeah, perfectly said. I mean, I'll finish just by saying, there's a song that has always simmered me when I going off piste, and it's such a gift. And if you don't have it in your lives, you should do. It's a song called Harvest Moon by Neil Young.
I like Neil Young. I don't know that song.
I don't even know if I'd be here today if not for that song. It is.
Do you know what, Misan? I think you should curate a Neurospicy playlist. Your like savior songs that help you. If it helps you, it's going to help us all.
Yeah.
That's your homework.
Amazing. And everyone that's listening, I've seen all of your comments. Just recognize, how imperfectly perfect we all are, and know that you always have mattered.
If you have other things you want us to talk about, let us know, because we love it when you feel seen, you guys, as well. So thank you, Miss Anne. Have a great
Thank you.
week. See you
Take
next
care.
week. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.